Today we are going to talk about domain-driven design and how to improve your architecture with it. A few words about myself. I am originally from Ukraine. I came to Berlin around 6 years ago, and I'm working from here as a head of engineering at Native Instruments. And in my free time, I'm a PyBerlin organizer. This is a lovely meetup in Berlin. It used to be online, but we hope to go to offline version or maybe mixed version. And obviously, you are all invited to this meetup. You can join if there are online events. And I have around 11 years of experience in software development, starting from game development, also different kinds of development. And from those years, I am around 7 years in Python. So you can see how much I love the Python language. And I would like to switch to something else today, something more architecture related. So there is no need to write any Python code to make perfect architecture, but then you would be able to write some code afterwards. So today, this talk is not about me, it's about you and about your architecture. Let's go and get to know your architecture first. Just a few questions. You can also write in the chat, in Slack channel. What is the good architecture to you? And I know that a lot of developers, they have different opinions, they have different experiences with architecture, with different examples of how one architecture worked for one company and then didn't work for another company, or maybe even one team and then another team, it was not so perfect. Maybe it's a monolithic architecture. Well, it's big, solid, heavy. It could be good in some cases, but could be also bad. And if we go to service-based architecture, like small fishes and then the huge heavy fish, obviously the more distributed architecture looks better. It looks like lightweight architecture with loosely coupled modules which are not tied to each other. But what if we have microservices? For example, this one. It looks like a bad example of microservices. So if one part of this architecture, no matter which part, would go offline, it could actually break the entire system. I saw different examples of this, also with not so perfect microservice architecture and just terrible architecture. And it's so easy to make it this kind of way. And my question would be to you, how to make this right? How to make your architecture great? There is an answer. You heard about it. Low coupling and high cohesion. Looks good, right? Cohesion is about how well elements within one module belong together and how well they serve one common purpose. Coupling is about how much one module depends or interacts with other modules. As you can see in the picture, when those modules within this box, within one service, if they interact nicely within each other, and then they don't have too many interactions between different services, it's good, right? But as long as you keep this low, those interactions between different huge systems, it would serve the purpose. So in this case, if we would think of the domain terms, one box, the big box, which is representing the service, would be a domain. I will go into details a bit later. And then the better you decouple domains to serve one purpose, only one single common purpose, the better this situation with low coupling and high cohesion is. So seriously, how to achieve this perfect state of architecture? Maybe domain-driven design. Do you know domain-driven design? I would be super curious to know how many people do know domain-driven design or just heard about it or read the book. But the actual question is, if you use domain-driven design, it's not enough to just know the techniques. It's just not enough to know what the domain is. It's not even enough to know how to use it. It's nice to have some experience, or it's nice to have those approaches applicable to your project. I would say that there's no magic. It's super simple. You just need to follow a few rules. And then domain-driven design would let you to identify domains to make it as a nice and simple split of the different purposes of the domains as a foundation of the future perfect architecture. So what is the domain, you might ask? The domain is a part of business that you're working in, and then it's a set of problems that this business is trying to solve. This could typically involve the rules, the processes, different existing systems that should be integrated as a part of the solution. So the domain is a set of ideas, the knowledge, data of the problem that you are trying to solve. Let's take a look into one example. I created an example for you to follow and then to see how to use the domain-driven design if you have just a simple project. This is a very nice template how to start a project, or if you have already existing project and you just need to shape it up, or even a feature. So the project that we are working on today is ice cream. Actually, ice cream project. The application is called Ice Cream Now, and it's built for the people who love ice cream and want it to be delivered super fast to their homes. So what are we making at this point? We are making the ice cream delivery application that every user could use, and then they can order ice cream to their places, or they can just book some ice cream to pick up later on. Let's go into some demo. I hope that there is a link shared in here, and maybe you can follow here in the read-only mode. If you would follow my cursor, you might see maybe more details, more interested to you details of this project. So on the huge scale, this is the name of the project, Ice Cream Now. And then I know that you cannot see it. I will zoom in definitely in a second. This is the example how to start with domain-driven design. The first and the very important part of this journey is to define what the project actually does. And for that, we will use Eventstorming technique. So this technique would help you to focus on the different external systems, the domain events, policies, so everything that you can think of in terms of different actors performing some actions, or maybe some actions happening in the system. If we have this ice cream shop, for example, let me zoom in a bit, we can think of different use cases. For example, usual user, let's imagine I'm the usual user, I'm going outside, it's super hot outside, and I really want to eat some ice cream. Of course, in my preferred flavor. I saw an advertising somewhere about the application, I scanned the QR code, installed the application. So this is all not technical, as you can see. It's far from architecture. But that would help you to build a sequence of the events, the main events, on how can you bring this application from the very beginning when the user just saw this application until the very end when the user journey is finished. It's quite simple to put the things on the super technical level, but it's important to have the entire journey showed on one picture. It should not be too complex and too interconnected. As you can see, yeah, there are a few ways of different journeys of the user, but this is one journey. So the user starts in here, and then the user goes to an end. So that's it, that's one journey. And the second journey is the store manager who picks up the order. It could be different. So based on the things that you focus in the application, it would look differently. And for different people, it could have more details or less details in this case. But you can fix this in the next steps. As soon as you have this Eventstorming journey of the users, different actors, then you can focus on breaking down the domains and then add some things that you need on the way. You can also put the external systems, for example, the payment systems in here. So obviously you would not write software to verify payment details. You would use already something existing. So then you need to also reflect here. And then this user journey can go from one user, from one actor to another. For example, it starts with the local manager, and then it goes to the administrator who registers the shop, then back to the local manager. And in this case, when the user does something, it goes with the user further there. There are different ways of this journey. So the first one would be to pick up the store. The second would be to select the address to deliver to, and then it goes to the local store. So at the same time, there are different actors in one user journey, and then it goes even to delivery service, even the new user in here. As soon as we are finished with this, and it's really important to have different points of view on this Eventstorming template for your future application. So as many stakeholders as you can get can also put their ideas on the journey if it's a new application or a new feature. If you're doing the redesign of the current application, it's important to put all the steps of the journey on the board. Maybe you can even improve them somehow. As soon as this is done, we can start working with the domains. Exciting part. So this is an example of how to break down into the domains. It's intentional to make it so small, but I will explain everything to you, and you can also follow on the My report. So here are the domains which I pre-selected. The domain selection is not an easy step. You need to think on how to split into different domains, into different business areas. And it could be also different from application to application. For example, even the same application which does the food delivery could maybe focus more on marketing, or it could focus more on the way how the delivery goes, or maybe on the order processing. So it really depends on the business area, on the business goals, to split the domains and then to see what is the most important in here. If you want to get more examples, I put some links on the top of here. You can also check out how to break out the domains. So first of all, this is the context. The context of one application. To have the low coupling, you need to have those contexts somewhat more or less independent from each other. In this case, we have user sign up, shop sign up, ice cream delivery, or discovery, then order processing, and then reviews. Looks pretty simple. So it's the same user journey, just split into different types of actions. So this is the user sign up domain, which corresponds to the user journey in this shop. It could be also that the domain is not like one box at one place. It could be also jumping across the entire user journey. So one piece is here, one piece is there. It doesn't have to be connected to each other. But what I noticed during the Eventstorming phase and then breaking down to the domains, it should not be super chaotic. For example, if you have so many arrows everywhere, that means that you can improve something probably. Maybe you have already too many interactions. And also the trick is here is not to put technical things and systems into this event storming. So as soon as you have already existing application, you have already existing software, it's so easy to go into those details, technical details, that this part of the application, like this module sends the data to this module, then this module sends the data to this module. At this point, it's not technical. It goes into technical details later on, way later. So whenever you are splitting the domain, it's about business and the business goals, the user needs. There are no systems at this point. There are no applications or no services, no databases. There are external systems which already exist, which you will use in the future in your application, but that's it. That's the maximum technical detail that you can see in here. So then if you go down to the next step would be showing messages between the systems. For example, you have the user and then the application, and this is the step of the ice cream discovery. So you need to locate the nearby shops. You would have to write a lot of those because there are different use cases. You need to write down a lot of the use cases and then write how the system interacts with the user. As you can see, this is the context, ice cream discovery from the above. You can go and check in here. Ice cream discovery. So we just took this context and decided to model the use case of the ice cream discovery of the shops. Yeah, let's go down. So how does it go? We have the bounded context. We have the system that's like a big box. We don't really know what the application does, but we know that there are messages between the systems. We have the user, we have the application, and then, so the application, that's a website, basically, that's a website. And then, or the application in the phone. And this is the system, the bounded context that we have to write backend for, basically. So the user sends some information in. At this point, the user is already known, so there would be a user ID probably. Then after that, there would be a user location, longitude and latitude. And after that, the answer from this part of our application, from this bounded context, from this domain, would be the list of shops, which then user can pick up from. This is how you model the messages between different systems. And then what's next? So the next, and something that I'm not going to show you in this talk, because it's going to be, I don't know, maybe a few hours to run. It would be modeling and the C4 model. That's the model which I really like using. You can go and check how it looks. So these are the pictures from the c4model.com. And first you start on the high level. So in this case, there is a banking example. So there is a customer, there is the entire system, and those are external systems. So basically this internet banking system would be our ice cream shop. And then those would be short messages in between the entire system and then all the external systems. Then the next step, you just zoom in. So you zoom in into this system, which would be our system. There would be different types of application. Also, you could see different bounded contexts on the next step. So in here, you would probably see those bounded contexts that we already defined on the previous level. You would see some database, some systems like payment system in this case, also depending on what are we building, if it's a website or it's a mobile application, it would be pretty much the same on the top. And then there would be some interactions in between those contexts, like sending the user data over and then finding the location. After that, we can even zoom in And here is where we would see probably some classes that we will write in the code. So at the very last step, it's already the code step. Usually at the modeling phase with the team, all of those steps, they are with the engineers. So the first one, if we go back to the top, so this Eventstorming, that's for just all the stakeholders and the team, which means that product owner, probably UI UX designers, developers, they can all join the session and then just model the vision of the application and the user journey. Or maybe sometimes the product owner already has the picture, or maybe UI UX designer has already the picture of the user journey. It's just in the different format. So maybe we can transfer it to this format, put the external systems, and then break it down to different domains. Then the next part, I think it's easier to explain if we would do that on the engineering level, because the domains and the context are more related to the future architecture and the future system that we will build, but not to the UI or UX or any user experience. So the user experience, those are the orange boxes. And these are the separate systems that we're going to build. It could be different services, or it could be even a monolithic architecture with different modules. After that, this is also super technical. So this is already on the level of the sending messages over. And the most technical part, this is already writing the code. So I hope you enjoyed this example. And I would also like to recommend a few things to learn. For example, the wordly mapping, and also defining the strategy. Wordly mapping, that's something that I recommend you to use if you have already the old code base, or really old application, or maybe even new application, but you feel that it's not efficient enough, maybe a few years old application, which was built quite quickly, and then you feel that it's not performing enough for the intended business goal. You can use the wordly mapping to map on how can you improve the way from the user, basically, to the machines, to the bare metal. Maybe you can improve even some user journeys. So then, for example, in this video, if you would check it out, there was an example that you can print some papers, bring those papers to one shop. This shop would file the papers to another shop, then that shop would file something to another shop. I can also give you an example of making some documents here in Germany. It is painful. I mean, it's already way improved with sending the emails, but in the past, I remember it was like coming to one place, you need to bring some papers, and then they need to fill the forms, and then in those forms they need to send those forms over to somebody else, so then this somebody else would fill some other forms and send to another place, and it would be so simpler to come to one single place, fill all the forms, and then they would be distributed across different organizations. This looks more like service-based architecture, where you have different message buses for different applications. But it's not always obvious to see how those interactions are. Especially when the system is old, when it's huge, it's not so easy to improve when you don't see the big picture. So the wordly mapping would help you to see this big picture, to improve it, and then to even see the points where you need improvement. Also, I can recommend you to read about Team Topologies. That's a great book to identify different streams of work. For example, if you have this application and you have those domains, how would you allocate people, how would you assign how many developers do you need for each domain? And then how many interactions would they have? It could get as bad as the microservice architecture, which I showed at the beginning, because the more interactions the team have, the harder is it to deliver something. For example, those different domains, they could be independent, but at the same time, there is a handover from one system to another, and they need to have some contracts between the systems. So there are different techniques on how to set up the teams and interactions between the teams, how to think which streams of work are important. And let me start the presentation. I have a few more books to share. Another book, of course, it's Domain-Driven Design. It's huge, but it's super useful. If you don't like reading that much, you can join their courses about Domain-Driven Design. You can also check the links in the Miro board. There are lots of different sets of information which you can use, which you can follow. And all of this, all of the techniques that I showed you, like Eventstorming, and also selecting the bounded context, they are all written in there. So they're all explained how to run those workshops, how to split the domains. Then Team Topologies that I already mentioned, and also Accelerate. It's a really good book to set up high performance teams for success, and also set up some metrics, also see what is measurable and what is not, what do you need to take a look into, and what is important to see where do you need to improve the performance. And this is the end of the talk. Thank you so much for listening. I would like to hear back from you. I'm available through the Twitter account. It's already mentioned in here, and you're all invited to PyBerlin.